start recording. I've given you the opportunity to share, and you can go ahead and share while I start, and I'll call you shortly. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to yet another Teleseminar from the Center of Excellence in Migration and Global Studies. It's a pleasure to have you once again. The Vice Chancellor, Professor Abdallah Uba Adamu, sent me a text that he will be joining us shortly. Professor Sogolo, Professor Emeritus Sogolo, excuse me, he has always joined us on time. But today, as you know, is a celebration of teachers. And I guess majority of us are teachers. I'm a teacher and I'm proud to be one. My advocacy would be that the federal government and the state should kindly look into special intervention in terms of salary and benefit, so that our labor in terms of human capacity development of this nation, and indeed research and development generally, will never be in vain. Without the pre-K, or let's even say primary school teacher and the secondary school teacher, we wouldn't have been who we are today. And as such, we celebrate teachers, and I wish all of you from, on behalf of the center, all teachers, greater heights, and you will not labor in vain. We appreciate you. Today, we will be having one of our young LA scholars by name Malam Abubakar Rengim Surajo. Okay. You also did not put your surname. You are following myself. He is with the Federal University, Dulce. Malam Abubakar Rengim is a lecturer in the biological sciences, but more importantly, is one of the first or the pioneer Ted Fund Morgan scholars. Ted Fund Morgan scholars. Indeed, at now, we have one person that is also was able to make the list. And then, of course, it's a continuous thing that we are doing on that project. Ted Fund and the federal government has invested such huge money to train teachers, that is university, polytechnic, college of education teachers, to earn doctoral degree from Morgan State University. And Malam Rengim is one of them. He has published, he has published both nationally and internationally. He has also, to his credit, so many awards that time will not permit us to read. But I will share his bio data, the short bio data, while we take the question and answer or comment section later on. Madam Rengim, you can go ahead and share your screen. You have the permission to share the screen because you are my co-host, I guess. Yeah, you are co-host, so you can share and you can record. And then you have 35 minutes, sir, 35 minutes. So the title of his paper is Board Studies and Migration: Who we are, what we do. You have the floor, sir.
Okay, thank you, Prof, for the wonderful introduction. And I welcome you all to this important presentation today. I will be presenting on bird studies and migration: who we are, what we do. I am from the Federal University Dulce, as Prof mentioned, and I'm very grateful to the Center of Excellence in Migration and Global Studies for inviting me to present today on what am I doing. So I will be guided by the following synopsis. What is bird migration? Why do birds migrate? Classification of bird migration, importance of migratory birds, threats to migratory birds, conservation of migratory birds, who we are, what we do, the Hadeja Jongru wetlands, which I will like to take an overview, annual winter water bed counts, the Nigerian Bird Atlas project, challenges, feature studies, and monitoring programs, conclusions and recommendations, and finally, acknowledgements. So What is bird migration? Of course, there are several definitions, but as a general rule, is the regular movement of birds from one location to another, mostly on seasonal basis, and mostly within a year, from a breeding ground to a wintering ground, and back again within a year. So this movement has fascinated people for millennia, for centuries, and has been a field of study for over a century, and has triggered a lot of research studies in bird migration. Because it might interest you to know that a bird can come all the way from Europe, from Finland to Nigeria, and go back the same year. So it is really fascinating. And it is estimated that about 126 bird species and number of individuals ranging from 2.1 to 5 billion migrate between Europe and Africa every year. They cross the Mediterranean Sea, the Sahara Desert, and whatsoever, just to reach their wintering ground here in Africa. Some further move to Southern Africa. This occur over inhospitable habitats such as oceans and the Sahara Desert. Migratory bird species has been observed to cover incredible non-stop flight distance. For instance, the battle Godwito was observed to cover 11,000 non-stop flights, and the red-note Calidris pugnus was also observed to cover over 6,000 non-stop flights. And there are other migratory birds that cover incredible distances, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. And if we talk of the Arctic tern, which is the most migratory animals in the world, cover 90,000 kilometers every year, which is equivalent from traveling from the Earth to the moon and back again within a year. So from the picture here, you are seeing migratory birds. They are robs. They are known as robs at the Hadejongru wetlands, and count revealed over 15,000 strong. So what are the major migratory birds flyways? We all know that birds migrate from Europe to Africa and from other parts of the world. They follow migratory routes, and there are 8 migratory routes. And I'll be focusing on Africa, as you can see. There are some birds as far as from the Russia. They come all the way to South Africa. Some to winter in parts of Nigeria, you can see from the map. And in the North and South America, you can see some moves from North America to South America and back again, all within a year. That is during the wintering ground. So apart from birds moving from Europe to Africa, there are some bird species that also migrate or move within the African continent, such as from the West Africa, from the parts of Nigeria to parts of South Africa or East Africa, for instance. And during this exodus, birds rely on stopover sites to rest and refuel. For those birds that need to rest and refuel, eat, and accumulate fats, they rely on stopover sites. These are sites that birds rest and refuel to forage to eat. And during duration in a given stopover vary based on factors like weather, whether it is cold or it is hot, food availability. If there is enough food, birds will stop at a certain stopover site, eat, refuel, and move. And threats, including hunting, shooting, and trapping, because these migratory birds, they move in a large, population or congregation. So a lot of local people along the stopover sites target them for meat. They kill them, they hunt them and trap them. So these factors also influence the duration that birds spend in a particular stopover site. So bird migration, is it a behavior or instinct? Migration is instinctive. Yes, it is natural. It is inbuilt. Fly without guidance or previous experience, especially in the case of juveniles, young ones. Sometimes we have some birds that come to Africa to breed, to lay their eggs, reproduce, and go back to the wintering ground. And along the way, or after the reproduction, or after raising the youngs, they go with the young ones. And the young ones, they fly without guidance or previous experience, especially in the case where the parents abandon the youngs. They have to look their own way to reach their wintering ground. Use little or no directional clues. and we will see what clues or forces birds use in migration. Learning migration behaviors for most birds is critical to their survivors. And for those birds that cannot migrate, they have very low chance of survival. Migration behaviors, most birds must learn their migratory routes. If they are moving from Nigeria, for instance, to Europe, to Italy, to Germany, for instance, they must learn their migratory routes from where to where that they have to move. From Nigeria, maybe for instance, to Lake Chad, from Lake Chad to Lake Victoria, and from Lake Victoria, they cross the Sahara, the Mediterranean, something like that. So they must learn these migratory routes. Usually older members of the group teach the younger animals on the migratory routes to travel. The route to travel, valuable strategies and or behaviors that enhance their survival along the migratory routes, like how to escape predators or how to escape hunting and shooting, for instance. Then there are some bird species that are endangered. Their population is very, very low, and they have no parents to guide them to the wintering ground. So today, like for instance, the whooping crane, they have been escorted to the wintering ground by ultralight aircraft just to make sure that they survive, because they have to move. It is natural that they must move to the wintering ground, but they have no parents to guide them. So ultralight aircraft is used to guide them, how to reach the wintering ground and back again within a year. It is part of their natural cycle. Taught various species of cranes their migration routes. Animals who are not taught these behaviors will not likely survive. So why do birds migrate? We know they migrate every year from the breeding ground to the wintering ground. So why do they migrate? One, they migrate because of food and water. They will migrate to find these resources, especially when they are in short supply, and especially when it is a winter time in Europe. There is snow, there is freezing, and so the food is scarce. So the migratory birds, the palative migrants, the birds that come from Europe must come down to Africa and spend the wintering ground in Africa. Then reproduction, safe environment for bearing and nursing offspring. Abundant food sources. Other reasons, warm summer months may be followed by inhospitable cold in Europe. Like this is a wintred, and it is one of the most studied birds, tropical migratory birds in Africa. There are a lot of research studies about this bird species. It's called wintred, Saxicola rubetra. Then the best place to give or hatch young may not be the best place to find food. Like in Europe, like now they are approaching the winter season. So most of the bird species are on their way right now, they are on their way coming to Africa, and we have started seeing some of them, they have started coming. This is their time, October, November, September, October, November. Most of them start arriving, and we have started seeing some of them in the last 2 weeks. So the inhospitable, environment, in Europe is very, very cold. There is little food sources. So they have to come down to Africa, and also to avoid the weather, the inhospitable weather. Then what are the prerequisites for migrations? Sustained movement. A bird must be able to, move, to migrate, to travel long non-stop flights, like 1,000, 2,000 kilometers without touching the ground. Also physical endurance, which is more or less the same, and mechanisms for storing energy. They have to accumulate fats in their operculum, or in their, in their wings. And this is one of the warblers we trapped last year in Amrum Forest Reserve in Jos. You can see the fats here. So this is where they store the fats, and some they store the fats in the operculum. So when they are set to migrate, they eat and eat. They accumulate a lot of fat so that they can be able to sustain, or they can travel long distances without stopping to eat or migrate, because along the stopover sites, sometimes there are no food sources. So you have to eat as much as possible to accumulate fat so that you can be able to reach the wintering ground. Then the designated food sources on the migration routes, as they move, they stop along the stopover sites to eat, refuel, and accumulate more fats, which is also a key energy for migration. So how do birds know when it is time to migrate? Of course, there are internal signals or cues. Hormones trigger an overwhelming urge to eat, mate, and reproduce, just like a biological clock. When you are used to wake up around like 6 a.m. or 7, you know, even without an alarm, you should be able to wake up because your biological clock will wake you up. So biological clock, you know, triggers migration in birds. There are external signals, temperature change. When the temperature change, like now in Europe, you know, it is winter time, so it will signal to the birds that it is time to migrate to Africa. Also, scarce food supply, when there is, you know, shortage or lack of food sources, also it triggers migration in birds. Also, daylight hours, changes in the night and, you know, day also triggers migration in birds. So what are the migration destinations? A bird is living Germany or Europe or Italy. So where does it go? How do birds know where to go? Specialized abilities to navigate. There are external cues, forces. They use wind and water currents as a landmarks. They also use mountain ranges, coastlines like the Mediterranean Sea, river valleys, and distinctive odors. So they use these landmarks in migration to reach their wintering ground or their final destination. And you can see from the map here, you can see some birds migrate as far as from the, you know, Russia all the way to South Africa. Some, their final destination is, you know, parts of Nigeria here in West Africa, some in East Africa, some in West Africa, and some in North Africa, crossing between Spain and Morocco, crossing between Italy and Tunisia, crossing between Israel and, you know, Egypt. And it might interest you to know that all these birds have different routes to migrate or to cross, because some, in the case of small bird species, they are excellent flyers and they don't have problem crossing, for instance, the Sahara Desert or, for instance, the Mediterranean Sea. But for large birds like ducks, they always try to avoid, you know, coastlines, you know, or mountain ranges, because it requires a lot of energy to migrate over these inhospitable habitats. So they migrate through the Strait of Gibraltar. From here, you see, it is a very narrow migratory route. They avoid the Mediterranean Sea here. You see, very few birds cross this Mediterranean Sea, and others cross parts of Israel and Egypt. You see, it is a narrow route, so they always try to save energy. And also here, parts of Eritrea, Djibouti, and Ethiopia in the Horn of Africa. So also they use sun, track the passage of days and months as they migrate. Also they track their position in relation to the sun. In the case of diurnal migrants, there are birds that migrate during the day. And in the case of nocturnal migrants, birds that migrate during the night, they use moon to track their position in relation to the moon. Most of the diurnal migrants, they don't have problem with sun, they don't have problem with challenges with wind. But in the case of nocturnal migrants, they try to avoid the harsh, you know, warm environment or warm weather. So it saves a lot of energy. So they migrate during the night. So what are some of the, you know, internal cues that help birds to migrate? Like in the case of their eyes, birds imprint on the patterns of the sun and stars. Complex chemical reactions between a bird's eyes and brain also work with its magnetic navigation capabilities to allow the birds to sense which way it is north, or which way it is south, or which way it is east. Also, the ear helps them, tiny concentrations of iron in a bird's inner ear help it to navigate using the Earth's magnetic field. So they actually also use Earth magnetic field to know where they are moving, their directions. Also, they are big, which we might think it is just useless, you know, but it is very, very important as far as birds migration is concerned. Birds may use an olfactory map to smell their way around. The nerves in a bird's beak may help it to determine the angle created by its magnetic field, and the earth itself, this helps the bird orient itself to a particular place. So birds are sensitive to a mineral called magnetite. They use it in, you know, for direction, found in many animals, even including humans, allows animals to use the Earth's magnetic field as a guide, as a direction. So what are the classification of birds migration? We have long distance migrants, and these are birds that breed in one continent, like in Europe or North America or South America and spend the post-breeding period in a different continent. Like in the case of palliative migrants, there are birds that breed in Europe and they spend the winter period in Africa, that is in a different continent. So they are known as long distance migrants. Then we have short distance migrants. These are birds that breed and spend the winter period within a particular continent. Like in the case of most intra-African migrants, which we are going to see some of the examples, there are birds that, for instance, breed in Nigeria and they spend the post-breeding season, in Kenya or Tanzania or South Africa within the same continent, Africa. Then we have birds that are vagrants. Birds of unknown origin is considered vagrant if it strays far outside its expected breeding, wintering, or migratory rate. They are also called accidental birds. These unusual visitors can cause great excitement in the ornithological world because, for instance, if a bird is known as an intra-African migrant and accidentally it is, seen in Europe, then it is termed vagrant migrant or vagrant species. So what are the types of migratory birds in Africa? We have two types of migratory birds in Africa. We have the palliative migrants, and these are birds that breed in Europe, North Africa, and part of Asia, and spend their wintering season in tropical Africa, like the wood sandpiper, like the common sandpiper, like the marsh sandpiper, a lot of them. Even the marsh harrier, it is a migratory raptor. Even the osprey, they are all palliative migrants. They are European birds, but comes down to Africa to spend their wintering period. Then we have intra-African migrants. These are birds that breed in one part of Africa and spend the post-breeding season in a different location or appear partially in another part within Africa, like the African grey hornbill and Classis cuckoo. So these are some of the palliative winter birds that comes to Africa. All these shots were taken by me. This is a great snipe. It is a palliative migrant. It is a European bird that comes down to Africa and specifically Nigeria to spend the wintering period and go back when it is summertime in Europe. And then we have a winchat. Then this is common green shark. This is European bee eater. And this is northern whittier, yellow wagtail, gargany. And this, we tag this individual with a telemeter, that is a satellite instrument that can give us insights, as to where the birds come from and which routes do the birds take when it is going back home and from where it comes from. So this is a telemeter. We did this project between last year around December and February. And we are expecting these birds to come back around in the next, in this month or in the next few months. So this is Colosi ibis. It's also a palliative migrant bird. And these are some of the intra-African migrants, some birds that migrate, that breed in one part of Africa and spend the post-breeding season in a different location or appear partially in one part of Africa. And this is, I'm sure we are very familiar with this bird. It is called Abdim stock, and it signals or it gives an important insight as to when one should start farming, or because they mostly come around June, July, when it will start raining. So most of the local communities or local farmers use it as a sign, to start farming. It is Abdim stock. This is yellow bill kite. It is a raptor, and this is African cuckoo. And this is African grey hornbill. This is African open-bill stork, and this is Class cuckoo. Importance of migratory birds: play a vital role in the functioning of ecosystem, pollination, seed dispersal, microorganism dispersal. Like in the case of avian influenza, most of these migratory birds are involved in the transmission of, avian influenza virus, because as they move from Europe to Africa, they carry this virus on their feet or in their wings. Pest regulation, they regulate pests like the grasshoppers, swarms of grasshoppers, they feed on them. Also aesthetic and source of pride for communities globally, food sources for other wildlife, including humans, because a lot of other animals feed on migratory birds. Source of revenue to many nations along migratory routes. Observatory, because a lot of nations, they have what they call bird migration routes, where, when they
I guess Malam Ringim is having technical challenge. Having a technical challenge. Let's see. By the way, I posted the PowerPoint on CEMGS WhatsApp group. I'm trying to reach out to him. While doing that, I do not think I will be able to present this highly technical area of non-human migration other than to read. Let me see if I can project from my end. Okay. Okay, I'll go to slide 17, I guess. Yes. And I'll just share with you, just to be a substitute teacher. We are marking Teachers' Day. I believe he has spoken about the importance of migratory birds, which of course is also one of the areas I would like to ask some questions, particularly about yellow wagtail. He identified the following as a significance in migratory birds, play a vital role in the functioning of the ecosystem. They are so important to our survival as human beings. So there's that connection between us and birds generally, as indeed animals. Okay, I think he has joined us back. Malam Ringim, let me give you okay. You can unmute yourself, and I'm also making you a co-host again.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, the generator messed me up.
Don't worry, you are still in Africa. I thought you are in Baltimore already.
Oh, there is no light, and I on the generator, and it's also messed me up. Sorry.
Can you proceed with my own this thing, the sharing, or you want me to stop sharing while you share? Okay, you can share from your end. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. So threats to migratory birds, as this move.
I think we're having challenges. We can't hear you again.
These birds move declining than non-migrants, and some of the challenges are hunting and shooting. Many are targeted and killed along their migratory routes. Climate change, the greatest threat to migratory birds. Changes in weather patterns. Some migratory birds are arriving to the wintering ground very early. Some are, delaying their migration. Habitat loss and degradation, another great threat, disappearance of good wintering ground and insufficient quality habitats because of pollution, because of other land use changes by humans. Deforestation is leading to disappearance and loss of food plants. As we clear plants, they are important sources of migratory birds, and they also harbor insects, which are key food for many insectivorous birds. That is most of the small passerine birds that feed on insects. Also, another important threat is pollution affecting waterbed habitats, because most of the waterbed species, depend on water bodies. Urbanization, loss of critical habitats for migratory birds like wetlands. As cities expand, we clear most of the wetland habitats, which are important sites for many waterbed species. And this is a wood sandpiper. It's a palliative migrant that I shot at a polluted wetland in Kano. And you can see from the background, you can see how polluted the area is, the wetland. So what are some of the efforts aimed at conservation of migratory birds? There are a lot of international conventions aimed at conservation of migratory birds, and the most prominent is the Convention on the Conservation of Migratory Species of Wild Animals, which is also known as the Bond Convention, or the Convention of Migratory Species. And it is an international agreement that aims to conserve migratory species within their migratory ranges, that is along their migratory flyways. That is the countries they cross, because these migratory birds, they don't need visa to migrate. They just move, naturally from one nation to the other. They don't need visa, they don't need passport. So this is an effort to conserve them along their migratory routes. And it was signed in 1979, and it came effective in 1983. And to date, there are 129 party states, that is countries around the world. So there is also the IOA, the African Eurasia Migratory Waterbed Agreement, and it is an international treaty developed under the United Nations Environmental Program, and CEMGS, Convention on Migratory Species, founded to coordinate efforts to conserve bird species migrating between European countries and African nations. And these are generally birds that migrate from Europe to Africa. So this agreement is aimed at conserving these birds that migrate from Europe to Africa. And there are over 100 bird species identified under this migratory treaty. There is also, the agreement focuses on bird species that depend on wetlands for at least part of their life cycle and cross international borders, because these birds move from one, they are international, they are transnational, they cross international borders without permit, without visa, without passport, along their migration patterns. Its country covers 254 species, that is water birds, and these are birds that depend on water bodies. Drafted in 1995, it came into being or effective in 1999, and to date there are 79 parties. There is also one of the most popular conventions on wetlands, the Ramsar Convention or Convention on Wetlands. The Ramsar Convention on Wetlands of international importance, especially as water fall habitat. It's an international treaty for the conservation and sustainable use of wetlands, because wetlands are important sites for waterbeds conservation. So this convention was signed in 1971, and it came into being or effective in 1975. And to date, there are 179 parties. And to date, there are over 2,200 Ramsar wetlands in globally. And in Nigeria, we have about 11 Ramsar wetlands. These are wetlands identified and recognized not only nationally, but globally as important sites for waterbeds conservation. Currently, there are proposals for more wetland, for more Ramsar wetlands in Nigeria. So who are we? What do we do, or what we do? We conduct bird studies. We are concerned about the distribution, that is the zoogeography of bird species, and impacts of human on birds, because today, birds, not only birds, even biodiversity in general are threatened as a result of human activities. Changes in diversity, composition, and richness, and this is changing with changes in land uses. Urbanization and birds. Urbanization is affecting bird richness, composition, and diversity. And we are involved in citizen science project, that is volunteer projects, where we advocate for volunteer understanding, public research, knowledge dissemination and sharing, ideas, and other stuffs. So an overview to Hadejia Unguru Wetlands, which is the first Ramsar site in Nigeria, designated by BirdLife International, by Ramsar Convention in 2001. It is also an important biodiversity area designated by BirdLife International, which is the leading conservation organization or the authority on bird studies in the world, BirdLife International. And it is a critical site for water birds conservation, as well as for other biodiversity like plants, like fish. And this wetland support over 4% of the annual fish stock, freshwater fish in Nigeria. and support many communities and livelihoods, because a lot of its inhabitants depends on livestock grazing, farming activities, fishing, and other livelihoods activities. So in terms of waterbeds conservation, it is very, very important. Then the Nigerian Conservation Foundation, since 1986, initiated waterbeds annual winter waterbed counts, and which is part of the Hadejoro Unguru Wetlands Conservation Project since 1986. And it was an effort, or it is an effort, to account for the number of wintering waterbed species, part of the Iowa and conservation of migratory species, because a lot of waterbed species come to Hadejo Orunguru wetlands to spend their winter period. But we don't know which species come and what's their number, because this is changing, as land uses change, these birds are also changing, the composition, the diversity, richness is changing. So it is an effort to account for the number of wintering waterbird species. And this has yielded a good data set and publications, created public awareness and livelihoods among the wetland communities about the importance of waterbeds conservation in the wetlands, and also about the importance of these migratory birds, because they are coming all the way from Europe. So we need to conserve these migratory bird species and their habitats, which is part of the Africa-Eurasian Waterbirds Agreement and the Convention on Migratory Species. And Nigeria is signatory to all these conventions. So what do we do?
I'll give you 4 minutes more.
Okay, thank you, Prof. So we'll visit the rivers, ponds, and marshes around the Hadejo and count waterbirds. And this happens between January to February each year, and count the number of bird species, not any threats arising from human activities and wetlands. So these are some shots from the activities, and this is osprey, a migratory waterbirds from migratory birds from Europe. And this is the case of osprey. This was caught on Thursday. This particular individual, you can see this fisherman. It was caught on his net. It was caught on Thursday, 25th to 2018 at Malamadori Jiga, belonged to University of Helsinki. And how did we knew about that? Successfully released. After we go and secured the bet, we gave him 2,000. He said, since when he saw it in his net, with ring. So he said, this is an important bird and he's not going to give it to anybody. So we had to give him 2,000 to secure the birds. And after that, we just note the number on the ring, and we set it to EU ring. And within 24 hours, they replied that this is the information they sent. You see, the bird came from the University of Helsinki, Finland. Available records from the university revealed that the bird was ringed 106 days prior to its caught in Jigawa, and covered 5,808 kilometers during its migration to winter in Africa, in particular Nigeria. The bird was celebrated and successfully released today at the Baturia Wetland Reserve. So after they ringed the bird in Finland, so after 3 months, it arrived Malamadori, where it was caught. So you can actually see that within 3 months, the bird was able to cover incredible distance of nearly 6,000 kilometers. So we are also involved in a citizen science project, the Nigerian Bird Atlas project, which is coordinated by the Africa and by the AP Leventis Ornithological Research Institute. And it aims to map the distribution of birds in Africa, their status and natural histories, with the help of input from citizen scientists, which are volunteers. And in other regions of Africa, we have SABAP, South African Bird Atlas project. We have Kenya Bird Map project. We have Liberian Bird Atlas project. And the methodology, we use an app called Bird Lassa to map and log in data from the bird species. And these are some of the activities we are involved. This is some of the activities, and these are some of the achievements so far. A number of publications about range extensions, about birds, and of course there are challenges. Whatever you are doing, there are challenges: lack of funds, lack of awareness about the importance of birds and biodiversity, insecurity, kidnappings, political will and support. And these are some of the feature studies and monitoring programs, studies on the ecology of intra-African migrants, because they are not well studied compared to Pan-African migrants, studies on the movement, ecology, and habitat used by Afro-tropical migrants, and establish a bird observatory station and ringing program at the Hadejo Wetlands. So I thank the Center for Excellence in Migration and Studies for inviting me to present on what I'm doing. I'm grateful to my partners, Aplori and Nigerian Conservation Foundation. And thanks to you all that made it to this presentation, and thanks for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Malam Ringim Abubakar Surajo. What a brilliant presentation. I've noted that if you would like to ask a question or a comment, you should kindly show hand. I could see Professor Emeritus Sogolo, and I think that would be the only hand that I want us to use the app also. I can see also Dr. Seidu. But let me commend this young man. For those that recently joined us, I said he's one of the pioneer TED Fund Morgan Scholarship. Okay, he just started his PhD, and I believe he's a lecturer 2 or lecturer 1 at Federal University, Dusse. This is also part of his doctoral dissertation, down the line. I was intrigued about one of his publications about birds, because I never knew that we can also look at this dimension, okay? And it's becoming much more fascinating as we discuss or define migration, immigration, emigration. We can look at it from the non-human perspective. And I thank you. I have learned. Before I call on people to speak, and I will unmute a few people that I've identified. I want you to share with us, Malam, the yellow wagtail. I remember yellow wagtail as being not just exotic, but also a commercial bird, because I remember what I can call the Hausa Fulani traders at our family compound in Lagos, and I'm talking about the early 70s. They bring all this yellow wagtail, and it was really a novel this thing also in terms of the way they sing, they dance, and what have you. But I remember my great-grandpa, who was a chief, having a commercial dealings with the yellow wagtail, and of course, he was prosperous doing that. The other thing that I want you to shed light on is this app that you said you developed. Just share with us. I've unmuted Professor Emeritus Sogolo, and I will also unmute Dr. Saidu. So those are the two hands I can see right now. So Prof, kindly speak. Your comment. I've asked you to unmute. Professor Sogolo, sir. I asked you to unmute.
Sir.
Okay, go ahead, sir. Sorry, we can't hear you. Prof, we cannot hear you. Hold on, sir. Yeah. Can you unmute, sir?
I'm trying to unmute. You can hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to commend the presenter for a very clear presentation. This is an area most of us are not very familiar with. We talk about human beings, we talk about behavior and so forth, but it's discussing animals. And the first thing we always think about when you analyze the behavior of animals is whether the language you are using is truly the language that we should use. Because when you talk about behavior and you talk about action and so forth, you're talking about what human beings do. For instance, he's talking about migration. And if we are talking about human beings, the movement of human beings, we'll be talking about the intention of people, why they want to move from one place to the other. Now, when you talk about animal migration and you talk about human migration, are you using migration in the same the same concept, because here we must be very careful so we don't do what we call anthropomorphize. Anthropomorphize means you are, projecting the language of humans to animals. So that there's a lot of it in what the presenter has done. It is true that when these creatures migrate, they are doing it instinctively. In other words, survival, the need for survival, the need for food, change in weather, and so forth. Now, those are some of the things. Now, one of the points I expected to hear from the presenter is the issue of climate change. I mean, that has become so topical today that you cannot talk about the movement of birds, of animals, of human beings without referring to the implications, on their action by climate change, because that is beginning to be very, very important. So I don't know whether the presenter has, can say something about that.
Thank you very much, sir. It will at least tell us more. I did had him talking about climate change, but he will answer the question. Dr. Seidu, you are on mute, ma. Go ahead, you are on mute.
Good morning, Professor Sogolo. Maybe our VC is on. Good morning, sir. Then good morning, the chairman. I'm sorry I did not join on time because I had problem with my connectivity. I was ready before the time with my ETIS alert, but it failed me. I had to quickly look for how to connect my MTN. So though I didn't really get from the beginning, but the little I was able to hear, and I want to commend the presenter because it's a new field entirely, and it caught my attention. My question is from the incidents you told us about, the bird that flew from Finland to Adeja, Jigawa State. How were you able to identify that the bird actually came from that side? Was there any, maybe it was tagged, there was a tag on the bird? I didn't really follow because I did not connect on time. So, but that area is very interesting. In fact, I'm happy that I was able to connect eventually because we're not talking about only human beings. There was a time, because I read newspaper a lot, there was a time I read in the dailies that some fishes flown out, these croaker fishes in this riverine area in large number. And some of these fishes, they come from far away. They're not really, So it's good that you have brought us into this new field of animal, maybe birds and others like that. Please, how did you get that idea, or were you able to know where those birds came from? Was there a tag on the birds? That is my question.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The third person will be Dr. William, and if I identify any other, we will let them speak, and then Malam Surajo can respond. Dr. William, you are on mute, sir.
I really want to commend the presentation. I think this is a new dimension in migrational studies. I would like to find out from you,
Dr. Williams, we are breaking, we can't hear you. Dr. William, your audio is not audible. Can you fix your audio?
Okay. Can you hear me now, sir?
No.
We can't hear you.
He can drop the question on the chat box.
Ringing.
Yeah, I can hear you, sir.
Yeah, but we cannot hear you, sir. Ringing, we can
Okay,
go
I was
ahead.
saying if you...
Okay, I'm saying that he can drop the question or his comment on the chat box. Anyone interested, he can drop, anyone can drop comments
So go
or
ahead
question
and
on the chat
respond
box.
to the...
Okay, starting with the yellow wagtail, you know, from experience, I doubt if it is heavily exploited or traded in the north here. We have never experienced such events where the yellow wagtail, it is called in Hausa Hananoma, Motacilla flava, that's the scientific name. Mostly the birds hunted and killed are mostly the large birds because they are killed mainly for food. Like the ducks, like the herons, most of the large birds, they are the ones targeted for food. But for small passerine birds like the yellow wagtail, no, I didn't experience that. Then concerning the proper questions about the climate change, I made mention that climate change is the greatest threat to migratory birds because a number of bird species today are shifting their arrival. Some are delaying their arrival to the wintering ground. For instance, a bird that is known to arrive traditionally to arrive at the wintering ground around September, today they are delaying their migration. They are arriving December or even January. They are just having erratic arrival. Some they will arrive at the middle of the year, and that is not usual. It is very, very unusual. And it is as a result in changes of the global climate change. It is affecting their behavior, their internal cues. And some are shifting their migration. Some, instead of them to arrive around October, November, they arrive in January and February. And in the case of altitudinal migrants, that is also, the climate change is also affecting their migration because they are shifting their elevation. If a bird is known from maybe about altitudinal range of maybe 1,000 as a result of changes in climate change, it is affecting the weather. You know, they are shifting their range upward. Some are shifting their range downward. So climate change is indeed a great threat to migratory birds. Then concerning the osprey birds that was caught in Hadejo or in Malamadori, yes, there was a ring on the bird's leg, and which I showed to you. And no two bird species have the same ring number. And from that ring number, you can go to European Union ring. It is a website. And these guys, because they are more advanced than Africans, they have a central database for all birds ring in Europe. So once you have this ring number, you just go to the European bird ring website and just put that ring number. And it will give you all details about the birds, the day it was ringed, who ringed the birds, you know, all information about the birds. And that is how we email them that we got this bird with this wrong number. And they get back to us from the European ring. That they ring the birds in University of Helsinki. The birds belong to the University of Helsinki in Finland. And they give us the date it was ringed and the kilometers is traveled, the day it was ringed and the day it was caught. And in the case of birds with telemeter, which I showed you the gargany, there is a website called MoveBank. In the case of birds with telemeter with satellite equipment, you can go to the movebank.org to see where the birds are traveling, you know, the routes they are going in their migration routes. So this is how we got this information.
Thank you very much. We are celebrating teachers today, right? And I'm tempted to ask you, how can we teach about bird migration to, say, for instance, secondary or primary school teachers, or even for our own educational? We've learned quite a lot with your presentation.
Thank you.
Have you done that as far who you are and what you do? Reaching out to the...
Yes, well, here in my university, I'm teaching courses related to birds migration, like the animal behavior. And under the animal behavior courses, I used to highlight, bird migration, because there is no, you will talk about animal behavior without talking about bird migration. And as part of the citizen science project, I'm involved, like the Nigerian Bird Atlas projects. Whenever we go for outings, we interact with the local communities. And although they have their traditional knowledge, they know some of these bird species come from other parts of the country or from other parts of the continent. So we used to, interact with them and let them know these birds are, migrant bird species. They are very, very important. And whenever you see a bird with a ring or with a telemeter, it is an important bird. It is a bird, under studies. And last 2 years, one of my colleague went to Kaura Namoda in Zamfara and got a killed Egyptian vulture with a telemeter. They sent us the telemeter number from Europe, and with that, we tracked the birds to Kaura Namoda. And again, after the same 3 months, we tracked one bird killed along the Nigeria border. And what we are concerned, it is about the telemeter. The locals, they kill the birds for meat, but they don't know what that instrument is used for. It's used for studies. The birds have been monitored for more than 3 years. So we went and secured the telemeter.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think we can listen to Dr. Williams. We have less than 5 minutes to round up. But I also asked you a question about the app. You say you develop an app.
No, that app is developed by South Africans, which we are using collectively in bird studies.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, one should commend your Vice Chancellor, Professor Fatima Mukhtar, for encouraging this kind of studies at DUSE. It's quite commendable. Dr. Williams, is your audio good now? Dr. Williams? Emina, you're on mute. Is your audio good?
Yeah, Professor, I don't know if the audio has improved now.
Okay, we can hear you now.
Okay, I really want to thank you, Ringim. Well, this is a wonderful presentation. I'm concerned about, like I said initially, what happens to some of the birds, when we were growing up, that, they migrate to the south, particularly to the Sahara. And like Professor Soglo rightly mentioned, how impactive is the global warming? And then to what extent, what about those birds that are, going extinct? What happens? How do we document such evidence to say that over time or within this generation? And there are new discoveries also coming on board. There are new birds that we now have the discovery to document some of these birds.
Okay, thank you very much. Quickly respond to that.
Yes, that is why we are, strongly involved in studying the migratory birds, because every day, this patterns is changing. Up to now, nobody or no ornithologist can, tell you that this is definitely what is going on with the migratory birds, because it is continuous studies. It is continuous studies, and the climate change is changing, and also the migratory birds are changing. And in the case of globally threatened species, also their populations, like I have highlighted during my presentation, that the migratory birds are declining more than the non-migratory birds, that is the resident birds. And it is as a result of some of these threats, like climate change, the greater threat to migratory birds, like hunting, deforestation. We are clearing, vast natural areas, which are important for migratory birds, in terms of food supply, in terms of shelter, in terms of roost. So the challenges are just complex, and unfortunately, with poor funding from our own part, especially in Nigeria, we are not doing much to study the migratory birds, because it is very, very expensive to study migratory birds. Like, for instance, the telemeter we tag on that bird, it is over 400,000 per one. And you can imagine if you are to do PhD studies and you want to tag 20 birds, so how much will it cost you just to buy the telemeter? So, but with good collaboration and partnership with international organizations, you know, they can give you this for free as partners. And unfortunately, some of these birds are killed along their migration routes just for meat. Okay. You can imagine if you tag a bird with a 500,000 naira and along the migratory routes, it was killed for meat. So these are some of the dangers.
Thank you very much. I want to thank each and every one of you on behalf of the center for finding the time to join us. We appreciate the presenter, and we thank each and every one of you. We really appreciate you. Happy Teachers Day, and God bless each and every one of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, bro.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.